Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Comm Report. Wherever you get your podcast, you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the state of the offensive line and why this year could be a lot different than last year. And I think we saw some of that tonight in Washington's 13-6 loss to the Miami Dolphins. The final score doesn't matter. It's just about things that you're seeing, right? And I think, I'll get to some of that in a minute, but I do want to start with Jayden Daniels. But before I get there, let's talk about the Commanders had a bunch of guys who didn't play. The Dolphins did as well. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. For Washington, among the starter types, it was Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Bobby Wagner. They did not play. Cleveland Farrell did not play. Zach Ertz was out because his wife is having a baby. Brandon Coleman remains out with the pec injury. And then also Marcus Mariota, Sam Hartman, Dante Fowler Jr., they were out. Jordan McGee, we still don't know the extent of his injury, hoping to have a final update on that on Monday. And then Johnny Newton also still out because he hasn't been in. So anyway, just that's to say that you take everything with a grain of salt or just you take everything in perspective here. But I want to start with Jayden Daniels because he had another really good game. And it's not like he's putting up these unbelievable numbers and doing, 4 touchdowns this game. It's just what he's showing. And it's a trace that he shows that I really, really like. Now, he was 10 for 12, 78 yards, he did have a couple runs. One was a 13-yard zone read keeper. And that kind of led to I don't know about funny exchange, but it's certainly an exchange with Dan Quinn. And, they're pleased that he got the yards, but would like him to have slid. I'll get to that in a minute. But what I like is the continued decision-making and accuracy of his throws. And you've seen that. This is not new. We've seen this throughout from the time Jayden Daniels has arrived here. That's who he is. And I think what I like with him is there's no indecision, and he's running an up-tempo offense at times. A lot of times I know people want to say like, oh, they just run up-tempo. The quarterback has to be able to do it. Now, it can shorten your playbook a little bit because you're not going to have as many options available to you when you're in that kind of situation because you're kind of regulating who you have in, your personnel, et cetera. But you also have to have somebody who's comfortable and capable of running it. It's not just a matter of, hey, let's run it with anybody. The quarterback has to know what they're doing to do that. And that's why they can do it with Jayden Daniels. They want to see what they can do. But that speaks to what he's capable of because of the work he's putting in behind the scenes. Looking at a couple plays, and goes to the ball placement, the accuracy, the poise, et cetera. There was a 3rd down and 3 where he throws to Terry McLaurin on the outside. There's pressure. He hits his plan step, gets the ball out, but he's putting it in a spot where only McLaurin can get it. Because of that, McLaurin is led into more yards. And I think the one thing that Daniels is very aware of situational football. And you see it on various plays. And that one as well. You saw it there where he just knows where to put the ball. And if that ball's a little bit to the inside, McLaurin's not turning for any sort of a gain, but he's able to get more yards after the catch because of where he puts the ball. So it's not just ball placement, but what he does is because the throw is on time. If you wait on that throw, the corner thing can then close in the play. McLaurin runs him off a little bit on a little comeback, creates space on his own, but the space doesn't matter if the quarterback doesn't get rid of the ball in time. He did right there. There was another time where he gets the ball. I think may have been to Bates on the outside, but it was a 3rd down play. And rather than play hero ball in that situation, he put them in a position to get a shorter field goal. Doesn't pick up the 1st down, but you got yards to get a better field goal attempt. So that's just game awareness where he didn't try to save the day and make this big play. He made the smart play, put yourself in a better spot. And there were other times where he knows, I'm going to put it over here because in this situation, you've got the field goal. don't take a chance with it. Give your guy a chance or nobody. And then, as he said after the game, live to play another down. So I just think there's such a good awareness and maturity to his game with those kind of situations. There was another one too, where a ball to Dyami Brown, where there's a blitz coming right at, blitz up the middle, does get picked up. Jeremy McNichols does a good job picking up one of the blitzers, but he's got to get the ball out, but he does, he gets that plant step, boom, ball to Dyami Brown, turns, ball's there, another nice job. So I think like those are the things he consistently shows, but it starts with knowing where you need to go with the ball. I think you can play more with more poise in the pocket when you are aware of where you need to go with the ball and you're comfortable with it. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be like that, but it does mean it is what we've seen. And all we can go right now by is what we've seen. And to this point, again, I keep saying this every step of the way, he's passed that test. So, you see that there was poise. He showed poise on the screen as well. There was a little screen. It only gained 4 yards, but it's funny because it's only 4 yards, but on the play, there's pressure coming, but Ekeler has to release to a little bit to the outside. Well, he can't disengage quickly enough to match Daniels' rhythm. And so Daniels has to kind of clutch and wait while a guy's bearing down on him, but he makes a nice throw under duress. And it's, again, Ekeler picks up 4 yards, but you're 2nd and 6 instead of 2nd and 10. That's kind of a big difference. Or maybe, sacked or whatever. I think he would have gotten rid of the ball, but it wouldn't have been a gain if he's impatient like that. So a really good job there. And that was a 1st and 10 play. So a good job there. And then there was the zone read. Now this is where it gets funny because, so let's go back to last week. That play to Dyami Brown. What the coaches, it's funny because they weren't as thrilled with the audible because they didn't want him checking to a play where he's going to a chance of getting hit harder, right? Or hit more, or more likely of a chance to get hit. On the screen, you're getting boom, you get rid of the ball, but on the go ball, you got to take a hitch. And there is a guy that's coming, but to his credit, I think this is also something like what they have to do. They're going to have to trust him sometimes too. And on that play last week to Dyami, he feels the pressure and steps to his left a little bit and gets the ball downfield. Now, if he doesn't feel that, the guy might get around Chris Paul, or going to get around Chris Paul and probably hit his arm. They don't want that, right? But what you also learn if you're the coach, like, well, he handled that situation well in the pocket, but they don't want him taking a hit. And the same thing was true on the zone read run, because after the play, you see, he runs a zone read keeper and gets 13 yards, probably should have slid a few yards earlier. But he said he didn't know there were people behind him. That's where he got caught. He could see ahead of him, but somebody behind him kind of grabs him and tackles him. It's not a big hit, but the coaches just want him to get down. And so Dan Quinn's down that kind of close to the action, walks down there and tells him to get down. After the game, Quinn joked that, he was going to put him on double secret probation. You Animal House fans know the reference. He did say later, somebody asked him if he had a 0.0, Blutarski, again, Animal House. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, folks, or Google it. But he said he doesn't have a 0.0. Absolutely not. Like his GPA right now would be off the charts because of what he's shown. And Quinn was very happy with his accuracy and his decision-making. And he should be, because it continues to be very good. And, like I said, on the one to Bates, it was a 3rd and 12. I just checked my notes here. And I just like that he set up a better field goal rather than nothing was there. No, there was nothing you didn't want to force it, and it does a good job. And they also had a play action pass. And this is what I like. So on this play action pass, and they're using a lot of pulling action. Watch the guards, because Nick Allegretti pulled a couple times for a couple of Brian Robinson runs. And so they're doing a lot of the pulling action. So on this 3rd down, on the play action, they had Cosme pull. Well, hey, they're pulling on these run plays. So you've got to honor that. And it certainly holds the linebackers and kind of gets one to widen a little bit, which creates a space for John Bates down the middle, 16 yards. But it was a really good example of, when you were talking about marrying concepts, make the pass look like a run. Well, in that case, you run pull, then you pull again, but you play action off it. And that's how you get a good play. That's, we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen enough of that over the last however many years. But it was a good job there by the call, but by the design of the play to match, et cetera. So for the entire month of August, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is offering multiple ways to save on climbing and zip lining and 50% off axe throwing. There are only a few Sundays left without football, so it's time to get that last summer adventure on the schedule. There's no better place to spend the last few days and nights of the summer with friends and family. Don't just take our word for it. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring was named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. For the rest of the summer, you can get the best climbing, zip lining, and axe throwing in the country up to 50% off right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/Keim. We're going to start seeing the impact of Jayden Daniels on the running backs. And I thought Brian Robinson had a nice game. And he had a couple 11-yard runs. He only carried the ball 3 times. He had two 11-yard runs. Again, Allegretti pulls. John Bates has a really good block on one. But I liked on the first one where, Allegretti pulls, Robinson hits the hole, gets upright, presses that hole fast, right? And then the linebacker just gets caught in traffic, so he bounces through an opening, but there's an opening because the line does it. And the action of the play of the line helps create that opening. And then, Allegretti and Bates seal it. But on another one, here's what I like. And this is something to pay attention to. So there was another one where Jayden Daniels, it's off, little play fake, but he continues the fake around the end. He continues as if he has the ball. That draws the attention of one of the backers who steps to that side thinking this is after the handoff. But the linebacker after the handoff starts to go with Daniels. Not a great deal of time does he do that, but enough to help the opening. So that allows a little lane to open on the other side where he can't get over there to make the play. So that's the impact of number 5's ability to run. And we saw that with Robert. We're going to see that with Jayden Daniels probably even more. And I think they're going to be able to take more advantage of it. But I guarantee you, those coaches saw how that linebacker reacted to Daniels. He only took about 1 or 2 steps. That's all it takes. Because then the guard, I think it was the guard. I can't remember if it was Cosme or Biadasz or the center. One of them got up to the linebacker on that one and helped create more of an opening there, 11 yards. I think they'll take that all day. So, but that's where, again, that pulling action, and that to me was a noticeable difference. But there were more holes in the run game tonight. So, and I like the way Brian Robinson is running. I feel like his vision has been pretty good, very good, and his cuts running with power. But he's getting less full-on hits, right? They're more side angle hits, like where his power becomes even more effective. Maybe some arm tackle attempts because of the way the action of play, because of the holes, et cetera. I think that's going to help him. But again, that threat of Jayden Daniels running or keeping it, that's always going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be a big help. Andrew Wiley did not have, false start. That's been an issue, not for Wiley throughout camp. I would say for the offensive line throughout camp. They're using a lot of hard counts, and it's drawing their own guys offside or to commit false starts. Wiley had one of those. He also had the holding penalty. First game back, but we all know he's got to do better, period. I thought the O-line, though, in general, did a nice job, and I think they've done a nice job. Now, tonight, they did have Wiley, but they didn't have Wiley last week. They didn't have Cornelius Lucas last week, and they still don't have Brandon Coleman. So they had their top 3 tackles were out, and that makes a difference. And it made a difference with them in there. And so I think they did a good job. But again, going back to Brian Robinson, I like his start to the preseason. It's a small sample size for him, but I think he's done a nice job. And, again, good vision and Daniel's impact. So those are all good things. speaking of a guy who's pulling, I saw Braden Daniels do it a couple times as a guard. Liked what I saw in them. There was one where he drove his guy and he blocked to the whistle. And I really like to see it. I like him as a guard, like way more than as a tackle. And so I'm curious to see how he continues to develop them. But I did like how he pulled. He's an athletic guard. They do want guys who can move inside. He fits that description. I don't know where he fits in the hierarchy at this point, but I will say, like, he makes a better guard than a tackle, and it's that ability to pull which will make a difference. They're going to want guys who can do that and get out in space, etc. Now he's doing it against backups, obviously, but at least he's showing. To be honest, he's showing more than he did last year as a tackle by far. So that was good to see. Now I don't want to make too much out of a couple plays because when I go back and watch again and just see more of what he did, but I did like those blocks.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
Riley Patterson, a tough night. 2 for 4. He had a good practice on Thursday. Dan Quinn said he made all 6 kicks on Thursday. To that point, though, he's been inconsistent. So he's got, like, what we saw tonight is what he's been doing in practice by and large. So that's going to have to improve. Now, one of the things I like about Dan Quinn is how he goes up to guys, and you saw that. He went up to Riley Patterson after one of the misses and just told him, like, hey, clear it out. So he's very cognizant of that. He went up to Kaz Allen after his fumble and just talked to him on the sidelines. Kaz Allen may or may not be here. We don't know. Riley Patterson may or may not be here. We don't know. But he's coaching to the individual and making sure that you're kind of trying to reach those guys and keep their heads in the game. So, and I'll get, I was going to say I'm going to get to Kaz Allen, but let's get to him right now because I want to talk about the receivers. And Allen is a guy that they are certainly intrigued by and trying to find a way, how does he fit in? Because I don't think he's going to be one of your top receivers, but can you find a role for him on this team? That could be as a returner and as a guy who maybe becomes a little bit of a gadget guy in the backfield. And they ran him out of the backfield a handful of times tonight. And there was sometimes, like, he's got that shiftiness to him, which can create some interesting moments against defenses in those situations. However, and even the ball security is the big issue for him, right? And he fumbled again, the tough part for him is it was a nice run, a little bit of a slither, and he does go and cover up the ball. He had 2 hands on it. It just got ripped out. And that's a very, very difficult thing because ball security was the big issue for him last year. So it's going to be tough. Now, he also was close to breaking a couple kickoff returns. I do think the kickoff returns, teams that have an electric guy, I'd put them back there because there's going to be chances. There are going to gaps open up. And you get a guy with really good vision, you're going to bust a few. And Allen was close to doing that. There were a couple that were some nice gaps to get through. A couple of times just got tripped up. And, but if you make those plays, things look a lot different for you. But that fumble plus the, not quite getting it done and finishing the kick returns makes it tough. But again, it's ball security, and you've got to have that. So Luke McCaffrey, they wanted to feature him tonight. They put him back in punt returns. So it wasn't just a receiver. So they had him at receiver, obviously, and I'll talk about that in a minute because a couple of things stood out to me. One noticeable difference with his head. But they also put him back deep on punt returns 4 times. There were 3 times they kicked it out of bounds. One time he had a fair catch at the 5-yard line. Yeah, not sure I'm crazy about that one. Just if you're at that point, let it try and see if it gets in the end zone. He did have one that he let get it rolled in the end zone. Good decision. Um, anyways, so they tried him. They also tried McGunner, and he did a nice job. And the guy competes like he plays football, and some guys are players, football players, right? And that's a guy who's a football player. I mean, they have a few guys like that, but I think he certainly fits that description when you can just put him as a gunner. And he did make a couple plays there. One time there was a double team running down, splits into the double team, gets down there, helps make a tackle. Another time in good position. So I think he did that's a competing thing, right? So he did a good job there. Then on a couple passes. So he had 2 catches, and let's see, I'm trying to see how many yards he had. So he had 2 catches for 30 yards, and one was a 21 yarder. And what I liked on that play is it shows his size. They put him in the slot. He's got the size to help win in the slot, and it may be that's where he works best. And because I think that size can work to his advantage in there. And he's only not like he's some 6'4" guy, but he's got some decent size. And that helped him on this play where he's just able to get position inside and kind of wall off the defender for a 21-yard gain. And then the other one I liked, though, and he had a 9-yard catch, and I really liked it because for one reason. When I talked to you in the spring, there was one of the things I noticed early on when he was running some routes, that he was running with his head down. So he's not looking at the cornerback. When you watch guys like McLaurin, Dotson, whatever you want to say, like the guy can run routes well. But McLaurin in particular, I watch him a lot for how he runs routes and how does he get open. And a lot of it starts with it's your head. Keep your head straight, get your eyes at, looking right at the D-back, and you can throw them off with your head, with your eyes, but when you have your head down, you can't do anything because your head's going with your shoulders, right? And that's what McCaffrey was doing when he first got here. To me, it was an indication of something more he still had to learn as a receiver, especially in the NFL, to get open. Well, he clearly has paid attention to that, because on this particular play, what I really liked is he went right, his eyes were up, his head's up at the defensive back on him, and he just kind of flings his head a little bit to the right, defensive back, and it creates enough opening as he cuts back to the left to grab a 9-yard pass. Now, he didn't get any yak on the play. That's okay, because he did a good job creating that space for him. And because the defensive back recovered after that, but the ability to freeze him with the eyes, get that head turn and cut it back inside, I felt like helped him get that catch. So a good job there by him. And, I think he does a nice job as a blocker too. And that always helps too. So I got a few more things. Let's see. Zacchaeus was fine. He did have one down the right side where you've got to give your quarterback more room. He started off at the numbers, and it was on that deep ball from Driscoll down the right side. And there just wasn't a lot of room. He started off at the numbers. He got pushed over way close to the sidelines, and that's a tough one for then the quarterback has dropped in an absolute dime, and it didn't work out. So he's had a really good camp, and so we'll see what happens there. But just on that particular play, but otherwise, I mean, again, the guy's had a good camp. I think he can definitely help this team. Martavis Bryant did play. I'm not sure how many snaps they had, but he was in there late in the game with Trace McSorley as quarterback. The one thing he's gotten that, and I don't know how this is something you have to get back or whatever. I don't know how well he did at this before, but he wasn't doing a really good job getting away from press coverage. I will say that. And I think, when Miami was getting their hands on him, I think that disrupted him for sure. And then as a blocker, I felt like one time he kind of got on his guy, nice job getting on the guy, kind of let up a little bit too early, and guy gets off and helps on the play. So you got to get back in the swing of things, right? And do it. And let's see how he progresses in all those areas this week to see, is that something that takes a minute to get back, to get off the line or get away from some of that stuff? Like, oh yeah, I got to do this. It all helps to see it on film. So we'll see. It's been a minute for him to at that position. So that was just his first one. We'll see where it goes starting this week. Mitchell Tinsley had a shot to make a big play. It was late in the game. If you turn the game off by this point, basically their last play of the game, and it's 4th down into the red zone inside the 10. And Trace McSorley's in there. Give the guy credit. McSorley comes in late, doesn't practice. There was a definite rhythm was off. He had, it was just harder for him because of that. Couple throws that you'd say, okay, maybe if you've been in practice and all that, maybe you make that play. So on this one, a really good job by Tinsley winning at the line. Just stutter step, get it go, and then boom, cut inside. He's open on the slant. Now McSorley doesn't give him a great ball. He's open. You put it right in his breadbasket. It's an easy touchdown. However, he still gave him a chance to make the play. Tinsley has to reach up behind him. But I'll tell you what, man, you're trying to make the roster. That's a catch that can really help you, because now it's not a perfect ball. It's not always going to be a perfect ball. When you talk about the wide catch radius, it's not here. It's here, right? And so that's what he didn't do. And so you've got to make that play. If you're Tinsley, yes, the throw could have been better, but the ball was there to be made. The play was already made. And when you're fighting for that spot, those are the plays you have to make, period. And I think the one guy who knows that for sure is Mitchell Tinsley. What I'm saying is nothing new to not going to be new to them. They know it. And so, there you go. Ben Sinnott, another good job getting some yards after the catch. That's a big emphasis for this team, is the yak. And again, I've told you before, a lot of it comes down to how quickly the ball gets out of the quarterback's hands. Driscoll and especially Jaden Daniels did a really good job of that tonight. O-line backups, again, the O-line I thought did pretty well. Michael Dieter and Julian Good-Jones, I thought they were okay. I think there were one or two hiccups there by both of them. Stromberg was as a guard more, and I think that's where the pulling action, the one-time pull, wasn't quite as good. Don't know how his overall game was because I didn't watch him all the time. I watched enough of him, but it wasn't, we'll see. But I think he's got some work to do, and I think they've got some work to do to find out what they want to do in the interior. Driscoll, fun guy to watch in the preseason, does a good job running the ball, as we saw, and not afraid to take off. Did stand in there under pressure on the pass to McCaffrey, was about to get hit. Nice job there. So there you go. Defensively, starters didn't play a whole lot, and I told you some of the guys that were out. And they didn't have Hill or Waddle on the other side. So corners need to get corners. They're learning a lot about the corners, and they're putting them in situations to learn more. And what they've learned, first of all, I thought Emmanuel Forbes, no issues there. He had a good week. So, there's good and bad with everybody, and there's good and bad with him. And I told you about a play he made in practice the other day. I was talking to some people there, just what it was. And it's a play that the coaches really liked, and they liked how he's tackled, and they liked how he's played to that aspect of his game. So tonight it was Benjamin St-Juste, gives up a touchdown pass, 13-yard touchdown pass. Just the receiver, his press coverage just beats him, gets him moving, gets him to jump outside release. The problem here is that, first of all, it's only 13 yards. It's hard to catch up, but he couldn't catch up. And, sometimes Forbes getting beat, well, he has good speed. He can catch up. And then his length also helps him. St-Juste has a length, but he doesn't have that same catch-up speed. So I'll be curious to see how they plan to use these guys during the season, because this is what you're trying to learn now, is what can they do? Put them in these spots to learn more about them. And, what you're learning is they're probably going to give up some big plays this year. So can you play a certain way with your safeties if the corners aren't going to hold up in press coverage enough? We'll see. And then but then the key is, what do you create up front off of that? So I think that's, and the one thing too with Miami, they're a tough team to defend because of all the shifts and motions, all that. What I do like is it tests your communication. And I think that's a good thing to work on during the summer. Whatever the results of the play are, fine, but it tests how you handle situations. And I like that. I thought Mike Samuel was okay. One play where I really liked how plays off the receiver, goes to make the tackle, just kind of basically ignores the block, gets off it and makes a play. there were a couple of times I wondered what his job was on a particular play. And I don't know. I don't want to criticize on this at all by any means, or not even criticize, but diagnose it wrong until you know. But there are a couple of times I wondered, did he play that pass coverage right? I don't know. But it's something I want to find out this week, just for my own knowledge, but also tell you, because sometimes you don't want to say a guy messed up and then find out he didn't. But I do know there was, play to the tight end where the guy's open in the flat. It's his side, but was he supposed to be up? I don't know. Was he okay dropping back a little bit? I don't know. But I know it was his side. But what I know is he also makes the tackles, and he's a good sure tackler. Michael Davis, the other corner, he hasn't shown that they have an option here behind Forbes, right? To me, the options are, do you put Igbenegany? I think he's done a good job in the slot. But if they wanted to move Sam Russell outside, I think that would be tough because of his size. But he competes, and we're not at that point yet where they're going to do that, because I don't think we're at that point. But I don't know that Davis has shown that he could be that guy, like that he should be that guy. Now, there are a couple of times in some zone coverage where the Dolphins picked on him a couple of times where he looked like he was trying to jump around, and maybe that was the coverage. I don't know if that's the case, and the safety's got to get over quicker, but it looks like he's just got to sink more and make that a tougher throw for the quarterback. And it would turn out to not be a tough throw because didn't do that. Jeremy Reeves missed a couple tackles on one series. Not good. He's got to make those. He did have a couple good hits later, but you got to make those tackles. And again, he knows that. And he had a couple nice plays in special teams. Derek Forrest missed a tackle first game back in a while. So, he's been a good tackler and he's physical. So, there you go. Jamin Davis, another good night at that position. Now, always keep in mind, he's not doing this against starters, right? So there's a long way to go for him to still learn. But this is kind of like, and I'm not saying he needs to be doing that right now against them. I think this is a good way to learn and have some success and build on that going against other guys and just getting as many reps at this spot as you can. That's what they're doing with him. So to me, it's a piece by piece construction with his game. And one thing I saw tonight that I hadn't seen was a little nice move where he gets the sack and steps up, basically a crossover move in basketball. Step up, cross back to the inside, get the sack, nice play. And I think that really speaks well to his development. Now, wasn't always that clean. He did have a good pressure earlier in the game too, where I liked, comes off the edge from his left, and quarterback has to move and he's able to bat the ball, but a good change of direction too by him on the play, because he kind of had to read the court coming at the quarterback makes a fake, and then he's able to recover because he's a good athlete, and it's why you don't give up on a guy like that. There are some times too, I think he's still learning how to be a pass rusher. Where he had success last week is in the run, when he's tight up on the guy and he can really sink and drive his hips into a guy. But when they're playing off of him, now you need a little bit more of a plan and know how to attack him, right? So sometimes when the tackles are off and he tries to then go to a bull rush, it doesn't quite work. And, so I think he's going to have to learn about the strike point, and all that, and just the proper footwork. It takes a minute. And then as he even told me, he still then has to learn how guys set and then how to attack off of that. You got to read that. There's a lot going on in that head when you're trying to learn a new spot. It's why it just isn't a natural thing yet. And he's not a guy who's just going to turn the corner and beat you on the edge right now. That's not, he's not doing that. So, there's a lot. So he's got to learn the techniques of it, because he's just not going to just go win on athleticism alone. He's not, while he's athletic, he's not to that level. He's not Von Miller, right? So he's got to learn how to play with the techniques and all that. And that's what's still going on. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, still like him, athletic, long arms, a couple of nice plays tonight that show those skills. And I think he's a guy certainly worth keeping around and developing. Dominique Hampton worked a lot at linebacker tonight. So there were, a time they're down a few linebackers with Bauer out as well. So, and then they didn't play Bobby Wagner, but they put him in at linebacker a lot. And there were a couple of times he's dropping into like a Tampa 2 coverage. And this is, it wasn't just a safety being up there. It was sometimes there were 3 other safeties in there, and he's playing a linebacker role. So then later in the game, he was playing some deep safety. But I do think that there's an intrigue there. Could he maybe develop into that in that spot? Tyler Owens continues to do a really good job. And man, this kid just shows up every time you watch. A lot of work at safety, up and back. And then on special teams, he has one play where he knocks the blocker into the returner and basically that's how you make the tackle. Wins against double teams as a gunner, gets down the field. He competes. And I think that goes a long way. So another nice night by him. So, hey, folks, I'm all talked out. You're all listened out. I apologize for rambling on like this, but those are my thoughts from the game. I'll be back on Sunday. This will come out Sunday. I'll be back on Monday with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, as we go a little bit more detailed about some of the stuff with Jaden and some others, as well as I get a chance to rewatch the game on Sunday. Apologize for going long with this one, folks, but thank you for sticking around, and I'll talk to you next time.